Hello, Emily Wilmers here. This is my technology book review for Education 407. So, the book that I chose was Rosie Revere Engineer by Andrea Beatty. So, I looked up about Andrea Beatty. She studied biology and computer science in college, and after college began working with a computer software company helping people with their technology problems and other related issues. As for her author career, she has published many children's books about the STEM field. Along with Rosie Revere Engineer, she has books called Ada Twist Scientist and Iggy Peck Architect. Another couple ones called Dr. Ted and Artist Ted. And now, although artist isn't really considered part of the STEM field, I think that a lot of people overlook that, and it does take a lot of engineering and math and science a lot of the time, so I think Artist Ted, the book, coincides with a lot of those other books that she wrote. So obviously she has a big part in technology and classrooms because her books are children's books. So the thesis for this book, and I'll go into a summary in a minute, but the thesis, I think, is everyone sees the world differently. Where some people see trash and junk, others might see inspiration or creations, inventions. And another key takeaway in the thesis is there are no such things as failures unless you quit. So part of this assignment had my take on the book. So my take on this book is it's instrumental for young readers to expand their minds into the STEM field. It is an inspirational tale for any young child to reach for the stars and never give up, because I think that is also really important, and this book touches on that. Okay, so I already mentioned the thesis, but a quick summary of the book, and I'll go more into depth when I do the analysis. So Rosie Revere Engineer begins with Rosie being shy in school, and when nobody is around, she'll rummage through the garbage or any other areas of school looking for items to use for her next invention. She's really passionate about being an engineer, and she loves creating things in her free time, but she hides her passion because of people laughing and teasing her in the past. Until one day, her Aunt Rose came to visit and helped Rosie realize that her goals were not silly and that she was not failing when she created a flop invention. It was just simply the process of creating her masterpiece. So what happened was that her Aunt Rose came to visit after a lot of people had discouraged her and laughed at her. And so that's when she started hiding her talents and her passion. But when her Aunt Rose came to visit, she had told her all these tales of all the things that she had accomplished in her life and all the things that she had done, and let Rosie know that there was one thing that she still wanted to do, and that one thing was flying. And that really caught Rosie's attention. So when she went to bed one night, she was laying there just thinking, could I make this happen for her? Could I make Aunt Rose accomplish her dream of flying? And so she laid awake all night trying to think of a way to create a plane for her. And so when she woke up and she made her creation, she tested it out, and it flew for a second and then paused and then crashed. So she became discouraged again, and Aunt Rosie was the person that was there to help her and tell her that it did fly, it just didn't continue flying. So it wasn't a failure, it was just another flop. And that flop isn't always a bad thing, it just means that you have another try at it. So that's the brief summary. I'll go into more detail of the book in later slides. Okay, so now we have our analysis and evaluation slides, and I'm going to include a couple takeaways that I think are important from the book and reasons that I think this book is important for students and teachers. Okay, so Rosie Revere, the book, contains many lessons for not only students but also parents and teachers. So what I noticed in the book was that there was a page that explained that Rosie was not always shy about her engineering. So the quote I put under the picture says, "When Rosie was young, she had not been so shy. She worked with her hair swooping over one eye and made fine inventions for her uncles and aunts." So then the book goes into a detail about an invention that she made for one of her favorite uncles. And when she gave it to her uncle laughed until he started crying, and he was laughing and laughing, saying, "Oh my gosh, I love it. It's the best. Thank you so much." But because the uncle was laughing, she thought in her head that there was no way that he actually thought it was a good invention. He was just saying that. So she became really discouraged and shy when adults started laughing and making her believe her inventions were no good. So I put in my third bullet point, parents and teachers need to be aware of the tone of their voice and maybe the choice of words when talking to children about their creations or their creativity. Because in the book, as an adult reading it, the adult truly probably loved that she made this invention for him. But in a child's eye, when he was laughing and crying till he was laughing, she might have thought differently of it and thought they were making fun of her. So I think it's very important to realize the effect that your words and your tone of voice have on children. So that was one takeaway I got from the book. Next, I have another important takeaway from this book is that all it takes is one person to encourage or discourage a child from achieving their dream. So something I noticed was that because she became discouraged from some of her relatives when she was young laughing at her, and maybe some peers, they don't mention that, but I'm assuming some peers maybe laughed, which is why she was only looking for items at school when no one else was around. So I think it's very important to realize that people need to be encouraging. And for Rosie, the person that was her encourager was her Aunt Rose. And it wasn't until she came around that she realized that she has a great thing going with her passion and she needs to keep going. So I put the STEM field is made up, this is another important point. The STEM field is made up of mostly men, and it is important to recognize and encourage young girls who show interest in this field. So I feel like for a lot of people, a lot of girls at least, they become discouraged with pursuing their passion in anything STEM related because it's always been such a boy thing. And you can't see my air quotes, but I'm saying boy in quotes. It's always been such a male thing to be in the STEM field, like a doctor or an engineer or a chemist, a mathematician. Generally, people view those as men because that's who makes up a majority of the field. So when young girls show passion, I think they become discouraged very quickly. So it's important for adults to recognize and encourage when young girls might show interest in this field, which is exactly what Aunt Rosie did, or Aunt Rose did with Rosie. Yeah. Gosh. So yeah, I went on to say for Rosie, all it took was her Aunt Rose to be there to explain that she was not failing and that this was something that she has potential in. Towards the end of the book, the teacher is another encouraging force for Rosie with how she sets up her classroom, and I'll get into that in one of the next slides. So we're going to move on. And then we have another implication this book has on teaching in the classroom is that it illustrates a wonderful makerspace at the end of the book. This 407 class has done past assignments on makerspaces, and I have really loved the idea, especially as a hopeful junior high science teacher one day. I think that makerspaces are a great way for kids to expand their mind, and especially in the science classroom, it would be great for them to make inventions and all of that. So as it pertains to the book, I put a picture of one of the pages and a quote that goes along with it that says, "With each passing failure, they all stand and cheer, but none quite as proudly as Rosie Revere." Oh, I spelled that wrong. Anyway, so at the end of the book, once Aunt Rose has encouraged Rosie to continue following her dream and her passion of engineering, it shows what it's like in her classroom and that her teacher has made a space for them, for all her peers to invent, and it shows some of the inventions in the pictures. And it says, with each passing failure, they all stand and cheer. So at the beginning of the book, Rosie is shy and does not dare to speak in class, but after she is inspired by Aunt Rose, Rosie is excited and thrilled to be inventing creations in class with her peers. So the teacher does a wonderful job in giving students a makerspace to expand their minds and learn from their failures, and I think that's really important, is learning from failures, and that kids need to realize that just because it doesn't work the first time doesn't mean that it's never going to work, and that there's a lot to learn from mistakes, and especially in the STEM field. So I think that was another key takeaway. So I have the conclusion next. Undoubtedly, I would recommend this book to all elementary school teachers. I believe it is crucial to teach boys and girls at a young age that failure is not always a bad thing. And as I mentioned before, as a future junior high science teacher, it's easy to see that many girls become disinterested with STEM subjects. And I've seen that when I'm student teaching so far. And so books like these might show girls the importance of sticking with whatever their passion may be, especially with STEM. And if this book is read in elementary schools, obviously it's aimed at a younger crowd. If this book is read to elementary school students and they're given these maker spaces and they're given these lessons and opportunities, it might lessen the discouragement that these young boys and girls feel when entering the STEM area. In my opinion, there were not many weaknesses of the book because it was a children's book. It was very light and easy to read, and it wasn't such a heavy message that you were receiving. Although I noticed some of the heavier messages, many kids won't. So I think Beatty did a great job with that and did a great job getting her point across with all the showing the implications that these that using technology in classrooms is beneficial. Another cool thing that I noticed was Andrea Beatty has an entire website dedicated to educational resources based on all of her books. You can go and look at the resources within each book, and they include STEM activities organized by grade levels for students or just any young readers to try out at home. So my final judgment is that this book has amazing takeaways and implications for using technology and makerspaces in classrooms. I think all elementary school teachers should read this to their students. I also included the link to her website that has a list of all of her books and everything. And then the picture on the right shows, just for Rosie Revere, the online resources it includes. It has activities and ideas on Pinterest that you could look for, like that parents can use. Teacher resources, which is awesome. I noticed that they have NGSS aligned activities for grades K through 4, so that aligns directly with science standards in school, which would work perfectly in the classroom, because then the teacher would not have to stray away from the lessons he or she needs to teach. Let's see, what else do they have that I thought was cool? Oh, tinkering station for young engineers, which might be a station that a parent could make at home, or it could be a makerspace that a teacher could make in the classroom. It goes all the way to have kitchen science labs, STEM ideas for preschoolers, and cool projects at grade level. So those are some really awesome things. And another reason I really liked this book was that a teacher could easily use this as an intro to students to introduce what a makerspace is. So they could read this book together, and then the teacher could use it as an example to say, this is what we're going to have in our classroom now, and teach the students the rules and the ropes of using makerspaces. So that is it. Thank you.